Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of Rankable Live. My name is Garrett Sussman. I'm the demand generation manager at iPullRank and really excited. We're talking about probably one of the toughest issues that I guess people are trying to figure out. It's hiring. Hiring's really hard these days. It really screws you over if you get it wrong. It's really hard to get it right, but talking to the guy both in-house and for an agency, I'm talking to a man who's talked to so many different business owners about this process, and he has a process himself. Joined today by John Doherty. John is the founder and CEO of Credo, which can be found at getcredo.com. It is this awesome kind of marketplace platform, but basically what he does is he connects businesses with agencies for a range of different marketing services, whether it's like SEO, PPC, digital marketing, social. Thank you so much for joining me today, John.
Garrett, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and it's really become like what I think about and what I'm honestly good at over the last number of years. I'm no longer an SEO. I'm very much a growth and hiring guy. So I'm super stoked to talk about hiring in the context of marketing and hiring for marketing, especially in the weird time that we're in right now with the great resignation and all that stuff. There's just so much I've seen the thousands of companies that that I've spoken with do wrong, and agencies as well with getting hired and hiring people and all that. There's just so much in it that I'm really excited to talk about today. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, to your point, I mean, it's such a weird, interesting time, just in the sense of like there are so many people who have left jobs who are looking for new jobs. There's so many like businesses that are doing well that are hiring that actually need the help, and it's like there's ships in the night situations going on. But before
Yeah.
we even dive in, just a little fun. One thing that you shared with me, ahead of this is so three things that I learned about John. One is right off the bat, you lived in a hippie commune in Switzerland for 2 years. What was that about?
I did. Yeah, I went there in college. I dropped out of college for a semester. I went to James Madison, Virginia. Dropped out of college for a semester. So my dad had actually been there, spent a summer there in the '70s. Basically, it was just a place to take time and space to think through. It's a faith based community, so to think through kind of what you believe, but then just like living in community with people. So I ended up spending 2 years there. I actually had coffee and breakfast this morning with a woman that I lived with there 13 years ago. We lived in the same house for about a year, and she lives here in Denver now. So I had coffee with her, and it's just awesome to kind of catch up with old friends. But yeah, it was a phenomenal time in my life. Very much, mid 20s kind of set me on the path to where I am now. And I actually have the mountains I lived in tattooed on my arm. So I've got New York City up top, and I've got the mountains I lived in over here on my arm. So lived just southeast of Lake Geneva for a couple of years. It was awesome, man.
That's badass, and it's interesting how those early experiences in adulthood just kind of like they really do, kind of forge our path and influence where we're going to
Mm-hmm.
end up, like long term. Like something that you experience is like that shapes you. One other thing, so you're obviously a traveler. You've been
Yep.
around.
Yep.
You've been all around 27 countries, 47 states, but apparently there are three states that you have a problem with. No, that
There
you
are
haven't visited.
three states that I have not had the opportunity to visit yet. They are, yeah, I actually knocked off number 46, number 47 back in August, went to Hawaii for the first time. And I grew up on the East Coast, and Hawaii is a long ways from the East Coast. So I'd never
Love
had the
it.
chance to go. So we finally went back in August. But I've never been to Arizona. I've not even been through like the Phoenix airport. Which like I've been through most airports in the country. I've not even been through Phoenix. I've not been to Rhode Island. And I've not been, which is weird because I lived in the Northeast for a while, and I've not been to Iowa. So those are the three.
Interesting.
So they're very disparate, right? Which is going to make it hard to knock them off. I feel like I'm going to have to go like visit a friend, or I guess go like Grand Canyon, right? That's in Arizona. So I guess like I can knock that off. But like, yeah, those are the three that I've just not had a chance to make it to. But
The Iowa is going to have to be either you go to Iowa or you do like that cross country road trip. Like that was my Iowa
I
experience
know.
in terms of
Yeah.
and it wasn't. I feel bad for Iowans. I'm sure it's a beautiful state, but it was snowy and there was like a almost a car graveyard on the highway. I remember driving and it was just like empty truck after empty
Yep.
truck. So
Yep. That's how I hit Idaho. Like Idaho last year, we stayed in Boise for a night. We were road tripping to Oregon to
nice.
go hang out with some friends for a week, right? Trying to do as safe as possible during the pandemic. And that's how I knocked off Idaho. But yeah, No, I hear you, man. I'm just going to have to find some excuses to go, or like, I don't know, when, I feel a bit more comfortable just like traveling willy nilly, like maybe I'll just do a weekend to Rhode Island. Who knows? Take my wife and leave the kid with the grandparents or something. But yeah,
Yeah,
man, I've got 3 states and 3 continents left to go to. So we'll work it out. I got to hit
okay, well, I'm
Africa, South
jealous.
America, and Antarctica. I got nothing against south of the equator. I just haven't had a chance to go yet. So
You say, okay, okay, whatever you
yeah,
say, man. Maybe there's
yeah.
like something subconscious, but no, you should make it happen. No, I tragically haven't been very international. It's like that's one. And the thing is, and we were just talking about this before, is the pandemic made all of this very hard, which is my segue right into the pandemic, the Great Resignation. People are changing their jobs. Some companies have actually grown significantly. Like e-commerce is like hiring like crazy,
Yeah.
and finding marketers to build out these companies seems to be this major challenge. Why, John, why do you think it's so hard to hire marketers?
So I think it's hard to hire marketers just across the board, simply because most company marketing is one of these things that I feel like a lot of companies just really don't understand. They don't understand like the various channels. They don't understand the skill set that it takes to do that. There's not like digital marketing still is not taught within in like universities and such. So it's a lot of like kind of self-taught people. And like this is actually why I love like what Tom Critchlow is doing with the SEO MBA, because like he's talking about like, hey, here's how you actually get buy-in, right? In like bigger companies, here's how you get the budget. Cause like, I mean, SEO specifically still doesn't get the budget that it needs, right? Like it drives 50-60% of a lot of business revenue, but like it gets 5% of the overall marketing budget because so much is going into ads, which drive 20% of the business, right? Like that kind of thing. And we just haven't done a good job about talking about that. And also just a lot of marketers, especially a lot of digital marketers, have not done a good job of getting to that director, senior director, VP, et cetera level. Because we all kind of like teach ourselves, right? Like I'm pretty much self-taught SEO and marketer. I had the good fortune to work internally and work with some very good, very senior people. So I learned how to kind of talk at that level. And Tom was my boss and mentor in New York. So like, he's been talking about that stuff for a decade plus now. But I think it's just really hard to hire marketers because a lot of companies just don't understand, like, what does a marketer do? What budget do they need? How do we measure it? How long does it take to get results? Like all that sort of thing. There's not a good framework for actually measuring marketing. And so therefore, people are just like, oh yeah, I'm going to hire this like SEO person, when what they need is that but they don't actually understand what goes into SEO. And that person might be very good at doing SEO for like 1 or 2 websites. But when you're talking about like, I mean, Zillow has like literally over 100 million pages in Google's index because they have a page for every single address, on the internet. I worked for Zillow for 2 years, not on Zillow.com, but other brands, Trulia.com, which I worked on. 9 figures of URLs. Like, you can't be a tactician SEO and like do it and succeed with SEO at that scale. So, I think it actually starts from the people that are hiring don't actually know what to look for because they don't actually know what their strategy is, and they don't know where they're going, and they don't know what's required for, and therefore the budget to put towards it. And then marketers don't do a good job of helping them, kind of learn that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and you almost sparked in my brain the thought of like it's almost like there's a perception out there still, like of the Mad Men days, where marketing is just advertising. And
Yep.
marketing has so many more channels these days. And to your point about Tom Critchlow's article or his course about, the SEO MBA, he was just writing recently about, you don't move into these executive positions in marketing because SEO content, even social, they don't have this sort of representation. It's all advertising at
Right.
the executive level. And
Right.
so that's a game changer too. But people are actually considering
Right.
SEO marketing hires.
Well, and that is measurable, right? Pay-per-click is much more
Right.
measurable than something like SEO, and especially because SEO has so many different inputs, right? Or I call them out. You got to measure your outputs to get to outcomes.
Yeah.
Everyone has outcome goals. No one has output goals. The things that you're doing over time. But also because people have said in the past, like advertising is measurable versus like SEO, whatever is not. Completely not true, but people think that. And so they're like, yeah, we're just going to do SEO. And then like, we don't know what we're getting. It's because they haven't tried to measure it. And you can measure it, maybe not quite as well as advertising, though I actually don't think that's true anymore. There's just this like, feeling of like, oh, we can't measure it, so we're just going to do things that we're told to do, right? Like the number of startups that have come to us trying to hire an organic social, like agency, I'm like, you should not be investing in organic social at all right now, because you have no idea how you're going to how you're going to measure success with it, right? Let's talk about paid advertising. Let's talk about, let's just square away your Google Analytics so you actually know how many people are coming to your site, right? Like, let's do that first before you invest any money into hiring anyone, whether it's a consultant or an agency or someone like in-house, because otherwise, like, you're just going to fire them in 3 to 4 months. You're going to spend 3 to 4 months hiring them. You're going to work them for 3 to 4 months, and you're going to fire them. And then you're either going to say marketing doesn't work, or you're going to repeat those same mistakes and hire the same type of thing again and repeat the cycle. And that's what kills businesses, not being able to get that traction, because they don't know how to hire well, and they don't know how to measure it, and they don't know how to set reasonable goals. Sorry, I just ranted right there, but like that's my true take on it. That like, if we get this wrong, if we get hiring wrong, if we get measuring wrong, all of that, and it all goes in together, if we get that wrong, our businesses are not going to grow. Scale is not about scaling revenue or scaling like code or something like that. Scale is about hiring the right people to be able to do all of those things. If you can't hire the right people, your business isn't going to scale.
And to your point, it's like you even bring up the part of like, yes, the theme of this interview is around hiring marketers, but before you even hire a marketer, like, how do you know who or what or when to hire? Like, how, like, so what do you need in place before you're deciding agency versus in-house?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of things, and I'm definitely not going to be able to give like the full, thesis on it. But the things that a lot of people kind of get wrong here is, number one, they don't actually have any sort of metrics to know what's reasonable to expect. Like, I talk to 3 companies. I do these like paid consultations, like marketing strategy consultations, through Credo, getcredo.com/offers/porter. It's called our porter service.
That's awesome.
And I talked to 4 companies last week. And only one of them actually had their Google Analytics set up and knew how many people they had coming to their site. Right. So I asked them about like, okay, what are your goals? For your company? And they're like, well, we've grown 100%. One of them was like, we've grown 100% over the last year. Next year, we want to go 300%. I'm like, okay, cool. What does that mean for traffic? What does it mean for leads? Like that sort of stuff. Like, show me your metrics, right? Like, let's talk about if that's reasonable or not, what you're going to have to spend. Because they wanted me to tell them about like marketing budget that they should put towards an agency. They were like, let me share my screen and pull up my analytics, and you tell me what we have.
Okay.
This is $1 million+ dollar a year SaaS company funded.
Wow.
And they didn't know that, right? And so I'm like, okay, like we got to start here at the basics, that like you have to understand how much traffic are you getting, how many leads are you getting, how many of those are closing, how much are they worth on average. So then you can reverse engineer that to get to how much you should spend, and to learn your just to learn your acquisition cost, so that then you know how much you have to spend in order to actually reach those goals, right? You can't just say like, finger in the air, grow 100%, want to grow 300% next year, but and want to do digital marketing and have to put budget towards it, but have no idea what that even means, right? So like we have to start there, and so many companies haven't done that, especially early stage. Later stage have done it, but they still actually need that process, and understand what their CAC is and that sort of thing. Take into a cost, acquisition costs, right? Whether we're talking SaaS lead, B2B lead gen or e-com, CAC matters, right? How much are you, and then what goes into CAC, right? It's your ad spend, it's how much the people cost, it's how much your tools cost, it's all that stuff. And people are just like, oh no, so we spent $5,000 and we made 50,000. So our CAC is whatever. We spent $5,000, we acquired 100 customers, so therefore our CAC is $500 a customer. No, that's not it, right? So it really starts with like setting that base and understanding kind of what channels are profitable and not, and having a cadence for starting new channels, testing new channels, measuring new channels, determining whether to put more into it or not. I've got all that built out, at my own company, and so many companies just do not have that. They're like, well, we get this many organic visitors. We had more organic visitors than last month, so therefore it's good. Not necessarily. Like, did your leads go up? What do you mean? Do you have goals set up in analytics? What do you mean? Okay, we need to start there, right? And my point is, Garrett, like it's early companies and it's later stage companies that just don't have this in place. Like they have ways to measure developer velocity. They have P&Ls to measure revenue. Like they have all that stuff, right? But when it actually comes to marketing, so many digital marketers have not done that work.
Right.
Let me put it that way.
It's hard. And that's the hard thing too, because it's like when you're starting a business, a lot of people who start businesses are not always business people, right? they don't necessarily understand like what is required from the economics, but also the actual, like just breaking down the numbers of how to grow
Mm-hmm.
their business and then how to invest in their business. And
Yep.
so if they haven't
Yep.
done that, that first step is either you find someone to do that with the business acumen, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's something you have your agency or you have your first marketer set
Right.
up. And but let's assume that they have that figured out.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
assume that you are one of those businesses that does have some sense of
Sure.
your analytics and you're ready to start
Yeah.
hiring a marketer. What's the process that you've kind of formalized and figured out that leads to that successful hire?
Yeah, yeah. So number one is actually codifying what you need that role to do, right?
Mm,
Whether it's an agency or someone in house. I get people reaching out to me. They're like, "I'm hiring an SEO PM. Do you know anyone?" I'm like, "Do you have a job rec?" And they're like, "No." I don't know who to refer, right? Is this like a junior SEO PM based off of the salary? Is it a senior? Like, do you need them to manage a team? Like, do you need them to hire a team? Like what skills are actually required? So you need to start there, and actually like codifying what it is that you're going to need them to do, right? So like if you have an in-house like marketing director, for example, that has an SEO background, so like you've got the strategy set. Now like, okay, you can either you hire a bunch of people internally to do it, or you hire an agency to get these things done, to create content, to do that sort of stuff, to do your keyword research and all those things, right? So really, so part of it is just like initially codifying it based off of whether that channel is performing yet or not, right? So if you're getting started, you have a different type of hire than a channel that's already working that you need to scale up the team in order to execute upon, right? Going back to talking about scale. So that's first, kind of codify, what it is. And then, I mean, we talk about funnels and marketing. Hiring is a funnel as well, right? So like so then you got to get the job rec in front of, enough people, the right people, right? So if you're hiring an agency, you got to reach out to a bunch. We introduce everyone that comes through Credo to starting off with 3, and we can introduce them to more if they need it. But like so basically our goal is to like start them kind of here, because they're getting to the right people. They don't have to, kiss a bunch of frogs, right? Like you have
right.
to talk to 20 to get down to 3. Like, let's just get you with 3. But like if you're doing it on your own, you start 20, you probably hear back from 15, you have initial calls with 7, you go to second calls with 3, you get proposals from 2 to 3, and then you hire 1, right? It's literally a funnel there. But getting it in front of people is kind of where it starts there, and then taking it on down the line. And the way that I train people to hire marketers, as well as train agencies to sell to clients, is have that initial conversation. Don't send them a big email asking them for all these questions, right? Ask them all these questions before you even hop on the call with them. Hop on a 15-minute call with them and just make sure that they have what you need. If they don't, you can refer them elsewhere. Just say like, hey, we're not a good fit. Then you go to a longer call. Don't spend 60 minutes with them up front, right? Like you do need to kind of qualify out the wrong ones before you actually invest any time, right? You don't have to spend an hour and a half with every single lead, nor should you. But that's kind of where it starts. And I think we need to go back to thinking about hiring like actually as a funnel, get enough people in the top or enough agencies in the top to know what's out there, to know what it's going to cost, et cetera, to know who's a good culture fit, and then we kind of take them on down the funnel from there.
I love that, and the thing that's resonating with me, especially with codifying your what you need, is for those of you who don't know what you need, and that's okay. There are consulting services, like whether you do find an independent consultant or you use Credo, like that you guys offer it to help people figure out what they actually need.
Yeah.
That part of the process makes a lot of sense. Like it's okay to ask for help if you don't know yourself.
Right. If you're a developer founder, right, you're a technical founder and you have no idea about marketing, don't go get it wrong, for a year's time. When there are people like myself that have been doing it for a long time, that in an hour I can get you. This is not a pitch for like working with me, but like, there are people like myself that like can spend an hour with you. You can pay for an hour of their time to help you get that signal, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no reason to kind of flounder, around if it's something that is, necessary for you moving forward, which I believe that marketing is.
Yeah.
So, I usually tell people like start off working, you get the channel started. And this even applies to like a director of marketing, where like you're director of marketing, you've got like a few channels working, right? You've got say SEO and content working. You kind of got that inbound thing going, but then you're trying to get your referral channel going, right? Like don't go hire a referral, a referral marketer into full time to come in house to run your referral program that you don't even have. Get that started yourself. Maybe work with a freelancer, work with a consultant that can help you get it going. And then once it's actually doing some things, then buy back your time by hiring that person. Like people get those wrong. Don't hire an agency to start new channels for you. Start that channel yourself and get it started working, then hire an agency to get back your time to take it to the next level so you can go and do the next channel and they can operate that one and you just oversee it.
I love that. I mean, it really is just that process of like test, and if it works, you double down, and if not, you abandon it, and everything is always changing. What John, are some of like
Can I
Yeah,
quickly tell you my cadence for new
yeah,
marketing for the new marketing channels? So when I think about marketing for my own company, because obviously
yeah.
we do marketing, we're a team of 6 now, right? We're growing. Like I'm still heading up marketing, but the way that I look at it is basically every quarter I'm starting or trying one new channel, or going back and trying a channel again that like we didn't get working in the past. So like one new channel. So say like this quarter, Bing ads, for example. We hadn't run Bing ads. Google ads work well for us. So we started doing Bing ads. So that is, we started it this quarter. We're putting enough budget towards it every single month to be able to get results fairly quickly. We're letting it run for 2 quarters. And then we make a decision about, okay, do we scale this up? And along the way, we're adjusting, right? So like we're optimizing and such. And then after a couple of quarters, then we say, okay, is this working well? Is this working well enough that we should keep this investment level going, right? It's basically the like, cut it back, maintain it, grow it is kind of the way that I think about it, right? So every quarter I'm starting a new channel that we let run for 2 months or for 2 quarters. And that's our cadence. And after 2 quarters, we're deciding whether to cut it out or not. But I'm also giving it enough time, 6-ish months, to know, to give us enough time to optimize it, to know, and measuring profitability and that sort of stuff, to know, is this a viable channel, both in terms of like the spend, the number of leads it's driving, are they qualified? And then also the brain space that it's taking up for me, because I've basically got 5 jobs internally, right? So if like it's a channel that's driving 100 visits a month, it's just not worth it, right? Like it's not worth the budget, it's not worth the brain space, so we're going to cut it out. So anyways, I hope that helps out some people as they're thinking about like, how do we actually like test new channels, and how do we give it enough time so we don't cut it out too soon, to know if it's going to work or not. 6 months is about right.
No, I think it's super valuable. In fact, actually, for those of you who check the show notes of this podcast, John wrote a great blog post like all about this, where he breaks down his cadence. So we'll include a link to that for y'all to
Thank
check
you for
out
reading
on
it.
the blog. Yeah, no,
I love hearing people read the stuff I write.
Yeah, no, I was checking out. I mean, it's like it's fun to talk about this stuff when you really like. I was There's so much bull out there on these blog posts where it's like, to your point that you've written as well, is like, writing content that's, all content does have to be for SEO, and sometimes when you write content that's just for SEO, it doesn't really resonate. It doesn't actually solve the problem. And so I'm reading this article, and I was just like, well, that's a good idea. Oh, that makes sense. It's like it wasn't just BS that was obviously written for Google for the sake of bringing traffic and but not actually like answering questions. So yeah, no, it was fantastic. Before we do move on, I did want to ask if, like, in terms of this kind of hiring process, obviously making a hire is a big decision, whether it's an agency or whether it's an in-house. Do you have any tips of, like, I know there was that whole BS red flag meme that went, a couple of months ago on Twitter, but like, are there any red flags, like, or tips that you pay attention to as you are getting to the narrow part of the funnel in terms of identifying who is the right fit versus someone that you really should, like, cut off and ship out?
Yeah. I think what I would say to that is, I mean, the red flags are going to be different based off of what the scope of the role is, right? So if you know that you need a senior person, right? You need like a strategist, and this person comes in and they're talking super tactically about like, oh yeah, we could have tried this thing, we could have tried that thing, and this and that and the other. You're like, none of that's relevant to my business, right? Like they're not thinking strategically in that case, right? If you need a strategist and they're not thinking strategically, they're the wrong person. So yeah, I think, and this is why I just say, like, ahead of time, you need to kind of decide, like, how much budget do we have? What's the scope of the role? What do we actually need them to do? What's important in the culture? That kind of thing. Because then that basically gives you the checklist, for the things that you're looking for. And if any of those is not there, they're the wrong fit, for you, which is why you have to have that funnel wide enough, like we're hiring, some content writers right now at Credo, and we went from we got 150 applicants, and we took it down to I don't know, half where, we kind of took to the next level and sent them a survey. And then we got, some of those to do paid test projects. And I think we found 1 or 2 that might be a good fit, right? But we started with 150. So you have to cast that net wide enough there. But we also knew specifically what we were looking for, and knew that, for example, we need publish ready content because we don't have an editor internally. And, and I'm not going to project manage like blog content getting written, right? Like I will pay people to do that. But I also don't want to have to hire those people right now because I have other hires to make. So we had that checklist already, and that's made it very easy to say like yes and no. So depending on the scope of the role that you put together, that will then bring up the red flags. For you. And, I don't know, when hiring an agency specifically, like red flags to look for, if it's honestly, I don't know, because it just really depends on like what each person is comfortable with. Some people don't want to use overseas talent. Some people love overseas talent. Right. And so if an agency is like, yeah, there's 3 of us, in the US, but we have a team of 100 people in India. Some people might be great with that. Others is gonna be like, nope, not a fit for me. Neither's right or wrong. It just kind of depends on the individual, like person and company's needs and the way that they work and the way their culture is. So, which is part of what makes hiring so hard, because there aren't really these absolutes, honestly.
Right, and that's why so often we do the word of mouth, right?
Yeah, exactly. But if you're looking to be hired, I will say a red flag is a company not knowing what they're looking to spend or what they should be spending, right? Like here in Colorado, for example, it is required that if you post a full-time role, you have to say how much what that salary range is.
I love that.
By law, you're legally required to do this. I just do it now. Like in our content marketer role, I said, like, this is how much we're expecting to pay, like for the year. Cause I don't want someone to go through the whole process. And then we say, we're looking to spend whatever, let's say $2,000 a month. And they're like, oh, that, I'm looking for 6, it's like, we've just wasted everybody's time.
Yeah. I feel like that's a whole other conversation, because it's interesting to think about the fear of putting the salaries out there. Like, where does that stem from? And ultimately, I imagine it's from, well, if you have a range, and you're trying to be budget conscious, you don't want to automatically go to the top of that range. But like anything, it's like you get what you pay for. If you pay below market rates, you're going to get below market quality of applicants.
Totally. But I also see people, Garrett, to that point, I also see, people start talking to agencies and they don't know like kind of what to expect, or they don't know what their budget is.
Yeah.
And I've seen them get oversold, and they're like, they invest too much, which is very possible to do. It's possible to invest too much too soon. You need to invest enough, but it's also possible to invest too much. And they're like, we're going to invest this. We were thinking 2, but like, sure, let's go for 8, but we need to see results 4 times faster, right? I need results like next month. And some channels, just like SEO, no matter how much you throw at it, you're not going to see those results in that amount of time, right? Budget, outside of people and all that sort of thing. So yeah, like you have to kind of understand that first, which is why like in like the RFP process, for example, like most digital marketers do not like RFPs. I've come around to them, but there's levels of RFPs. There's an RFI, like just information about like what we could get. There's RFQs, which is literally pricing. And then there's RFPs, because you're actually looking to get proposals and hire someone. Like those levels exist for a reason. So like start those conversations. Look at like our pricing guide, for example. Like we have pricing about like how much does it cost on average to hire a digital marketing agency to do SEO for you based in the United States? Your answer is right there, right? Like you don't have to go talk to agencies to understand like what that is. Then you go and you get the pricing for like, okay, we want to do all these things. What does that mean? Oh, it's outside of our budget. How do we get it back to within our budget? What do we have to cut out, right? As I always tell agencies, reduce scope, not price. Don't just give people more for the, don't charge people less for the same thing that you're, giving to somebody else for, a higher amount. Like that's not good for anybody.
The pricing thing with agencies is so interesting. It's so tricky. I remember being on the SaaS side of things when I was working SaaS prior to this, and you would hear like how, with SaaS pricing, you would only work where the pricing was explicit on the website, right? Like so many people hated it. With agencies, working with a few agencies now and working at an agency, I understand a lot more how tricky it can be, especially when you're bespoke, because every like need is unless you're looking for like a just generalized program.
Sure.
Each need can get very complicated for, to your point, like the scope can get really expansive, or it can get very specific.
Right. Yep. Which is why the way I think about that, Garrett, is, and I've had some long conversations with one of my coaches about this, is basically like, but there's also no reason why an agency can't break down to like, these are kind of the typical packages, right? Yeah. Like for, if you're looking to spend 2,500, this is what we can do for you. Looking to spend 3,500, this is what we can do for you, right? Like this is what you would get for that amount of spend. But if you need these other things as well, those can basically be like bespoke add-ons. because then it makes it easier for the agency to deliver it, right? Because it's like, all right, they're this level, right? But they also need these, these other things, right? And then that allows you to still do the custom like quotes, but not everything is custom. And there's like the base that you can scale.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. I mean, I obviously I know how most of the agency I interact with are. I'm curious your perspective. Do you think, because all agencies have their rate cards, do you think agencies should be more transparent with their pricing, like on their website, or do you think it makes sense that the current, world is let's have the conversation first?
Yeah, I think it's good for agencies, and once again, it depends on where the prospect is in the funnel, right? Are they looking for information? Are they looking for a quote? Are they looking for a proposal? And a lot of agency salespeople, usually when it's founders, they don't have that grid. They don't know how to think about that, right? They just send everybody a proposal, even if they're just looking for information. So we kind of need to provide them that those different levels and sort out where they are, where the prospect is in the funnel. I do think agencies should be a bit more transparent, or at least say like, hey, here's about what we charge. Here's some examples. Here's what you can get for this amount. If this is within your budget and this is what you're looking to do, here's what to expect. Let's have a conversation and, put together the right fit for you, right? You can use it as a sales tool. Use it as like a conversion tool, really.
We've been all over, and I could talk to you for like hours about all this. We didn't even get to half our.
Seems we should do part 2.
Yes, I got to have you back at some point to talk more about this. I'd be remiss if I didn't briefly touch on one of the other key aspects of Credo, which is, helping agencies find leads and their generation strategies. And one thing that we kind of promised to talk about, you help companies find marketing agencies.
Yeah.
What can agencies do to improve their lead gen strategies?
Yeah. So a couple of things that agencies can do. Number one is make it super easy to contact you. I see a ton of agency websites that like, they either like their contact us page is like, call us at this phone number, which is kind of weird because like people don't call anymore. Right. Some do, but like very, very few do. So have a form, right? Like easy, super easy, like basic, have a form. Too many agencies don't. Have a form and then make sure that an email gets sent to you when that form is filled out, right? Like set up a Zap that like when your Gravity form is filled out, you get a text message so you can take a look at it and get back to them quickly, right? So that's number one. Number two is respond to them quickly. Like don't take a week to get back to someone that's inquired about your services. If you do, guess what? They contacted you and they contacted 10 others. If you've taken a week, they're already in conversations with 8 others. They're probably not going to get back to you. And you're wondering why your close rates are low. So like be quick at getting back to them. Automate that reply and push them to a phone call. Like it's not that hard. And then the third one, man, is honestly like do a better job at messaging who you're a good fit for, right? Mm-hmm. So like we're a digital marketing agency. Don't be optimizing towards digital marketing agency, USA digital marketing agency, that sort of thing. Leave that to me and my directory competitors, honestly, because like we're the ones that should be ranking for that sort of stuff. You as an individual agency should not be ranking for that kind of thing. You should be focusing on like e-commerce SEO and SaaS SEO and like that sort of stuff. Say they're on your website. Like we work with SaaS and e-commerce companies that are doing over 7 million or they're doing, over $1 million a year in revenue and want to grow, 200% in the next 18 months, right? Like get that specific. So when someone comes to you, they're not like, are we a good fit? Are we not? They can be like, yes, we're a great fit. This is who we need to talk to. You're speaking my language, or like, it's not us. So we're not going to come to you, right? Which is fine because they're not a fit for you anyways.
Right.
So those are the common things that I see agencies get wrong when it comes to doing, their own lead generation. Just like let people qualify themselves in and out before, they even contact you. So then you can spend less time qualifying them in and out.
It's a great suggestion because it's like you as an agency, maybe if you're just starting or even if you are starting to grow, you're afraid that you're going to like disqualify too many people. It's that counterintuitive thought process, but like the more specific you are, the more appealing you'll be to your ideal customer. And, there isn't, you can niche down too much, but I think it's like, if you got to niche down at least a little, you can't be everything to everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. Require more than a name and an email address.
Awesome. Yeah, John. I seriously, dude, we will have you back for like a future one. So for everyone who's listening to this, if you're looking to work with an agency or if you're an agency yourself looking for more leads, definitely check out getcredo.com. Not only will I have the blog posts that we refer to in terms of the cadence of hiring marketers, which is key, and doing another one that we talked about, which is all about how you can focus on different marketing channels and the cadence of that. There's also the pricing survey of how agencies and freelancers are currently pricing themselves, which we didn't even get into, but that is a whole other
Yep.
massive, kind of report that you put together.
Yeah.
John, if someone wants to find you online, just generally talk to you or hire you for consulting, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, Twitter is the best place to kind of follow me. Twitter.com/DohertyJF, DOHERTYJF. And my email is just john@getcredo.com. It's kind of the best place to get in touch with me. Personal website's johnfdoherty.com. I haven't really updated it in a while, but you can get in contact with me there too, I think.
There's probably a
Hopefully
form
my
on
form
there.
works.
That's what I was gonna say. Thank you so much.
I just don't do any SEO consulting anymore. Like all my consulting comes through Credo or Clarity FM, clarity.fm/DohertyJF. So those are the places to kind of book me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, man. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Garrett. I appreciate it, man. This is fun.
This is fun. My name's Garrett Sussman with the Rankable Live podcast. Has been John Doherty. Check out, any of our past episodes. We will be taking a break for the rest of 2021. You are my last 2021 episode, sir,
All
and
right.
it was awesome. It was
high
awesome.
Note or low note? High note or low note?
Easily a high note. No, it's but when you say we need to have you back for another episode, I think it means things are going well and we talk forever. We'll talk about Switzerland next time more.
Sounds good.
Thank you again, everybody. You have a great rest of your year. We'll be back in 2022. We'll catch you then. This is Garrett.